I'm really excited to be joined today by both Andrew Flackner, who's the co-founder of RealScout, and as well as Chase Whitney, who is an agent and a user of RealScout, who will dive deep into how he uses RealScout with Follow Up Boss. But to start out this conversation, I want to start with Andrew first and learning more about RealScout. So Andrew and Chase, thanks so much for hopping on this call today.
Yeah, my
Absolutely.
pleasure.
So, Andrew, first question for you. How did the concept of Real Scout come about, and what was the original motivation behind it?
Sure. So I started RealScout about 11 years ago now, in 2012. And before RealScout, I had been a serial entrepreneur, and way back in high school, I began selling real estate. So I was one of the youngest agents, maybe the youngest agent at Keller Williams at the time, and I fell in love with the industry. But it was very clear to me that the national search portals were driving a wedge between my clients and myself. Right? Anytime my clients had a question about real estate, the first thing they would do is go to one of those national portals to find out which listings are hitting the market or what their neighbor's house just sold for. Or maybe they want to know what their home is worth. And I found that to be problematic because I wanted to be the trusted real estate advisor that was top of mind whenever they had a question, but they weren't using the tools that I provided, right? They weren't using the MLS as their primary search vehicle. They weren't using my IDX website. And so I thought, hey, there must be something that we can do here. And so I ended up raising a lot of venture capital and hiring engineers to build a product to solve that problem.
And I'm curious, when you said that those search portals kind of created a barrier between you and your clients, what did Real Scout do to solve that problem? And how does that tool differentiate from all of the other home search tools out there available to agents?
Yeah, so I think when people hear that, they say to themselves, "Oh, well, I already have IDX on my website." And I think the real honest question you need to ask yourself is, okay, but do people use that? Do they use that as their primary search vehicle, or are they still sending you Zillow links? And what we did, what any good entrepreneur should do when they found a company, is go talk to customers. And so my co-founder and I, we actually interviewed home buyers for over 100 hours of in-person interviews. And we asked them, hey, why don't you use my website? Why don't you use the Remax website or Coldwell Banker website? And a few observations that we discovered. One is that those websites are usually a little bit difficult to use, or they aren't as familiar as what consumers are used to. But the biggest reason is that consumers want a neutral, impartial place to search for homes. And when you have your agent or team branded website or brokerage branded website, it doesn't present neutrality the same way Zillow or Redfin does. In other words, when you go to a website and you see an EXP logo or a Remax logo, the consumer starts to think that they're not looking at all of the listings, they're only looking at the Remax listings. And even if that's wrong, even if that's a fallacy, consumers are still going to bounce to use a national portal because it has that neutrality. So with RealScout, we wanted to create a gray labeled software where it wasn't necessarily a white labeled IDX widget on your website or a white labeled app in the App Store, but rather it is something you can install on your website as a widget, but it will take you into a more full-featured, neutral search experience that looks and feels a lot more like a national portal.
Okay, and so some people watching this, agents watching this, they may be using their MLS right now to send alerts. They may be using their IDX provider, like you said, to send the alerts. So why would someone consider Real Scout, and why would they consider doing that sooner rather than later?
Yeah, so I think most people use the MLS today because those alerts go out really fast, right? When a listing hits the market, the consumer gets it within minutes. But the problem with the MLS is that it leaves a lot to be desired in terms of user experience. Then some people use an IDX website because they like the fact that it is a little bit more bespoke, it's more branded, etc. But the problem is that if you actually test this, your IDX website is probably sending listings to your clients hours, sometimes even a day after the listing hits the market. And it's really difficult to use an IDX website to send listing alerts because those backend systems typically don't have all the fields from the MLS. IDX is usually watered down, right? It doesn't have all of the advanced search criteria that agents have come to expect. So RealScout is the perfect marriage between the best of both an MLS and an IDX website, where you can have this really beautiful and intuitive experience, but the listings are getting to your clients oftentimes within minutes, right? And I did my own, informal research the other day, and I set up property alerts on Redfin, Zillow, RealScout. Those listings got to clients within 20 minutes or so. And then I searched on a bunch of other IDX websites that are really popular. And oftentimes those properties got to my inbox hours later, maybe 5.5 hours later, 12 hours later, 24 hours later. And if you're in a low inventory market and you're a consumer, are you going to wait 5.5 hours to find out about listing, or 24 hours to find out about listing? Absolutely not. And so that's, I think, the why behind somebody choosing to work with RealScout.
And I'm curious, I'm sorry if you already mentioned this, but how long does it usually take for RealScout to have those properties send the alerts?
So I know that Chase did some research the other day, and Chase, what was your results?
Yeah, so I it was a few weeks back, and we launched a new listing in our market, and my entire job at that time I sat and just refreshed screens over and over and over, and it was the same you mentioned, Zillow, Redfin, RealScout, and then another large provider. And I mean, full transparency, Redfin was 19 minutes to get the listing, photos, video, virtual tour, everything there. Zillow was 20, and RealScout was 22. So, but the other providers, like you mentioned, were hours. We were with a different provider before, and I can maybe talk about this a little bit later, but we were trying to launch some ads for one of our listings, and it's all built into their product. And there were several times where we launched a listing at about noon. The listing wasn't even available in their IDX portal until the following morning. And like Andrew mentioned, in a low inventory market where things are flying and you're trying to get your properties out there, that's just too long. So I love the speed of it for sure.
Well, yeah, not only that, but the responsibility you have to the homeowner you're working with of your responsibility to market their property, and it's not even on your homepage. That leaves a bad taste in their mouth and might start the experience off on the wrong foot once they go live. So that's definitely a big pain point I've heard as well with other IDX providers. So Andrew, can we switch gears? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chase.
I was just going to say real quick, Andrew touched on this too, but I mean, as an agent, practicing agent, I mean, one of the not least favorite things, but one thing that does irk us is when clients send us Zillow links or Redfin links for properties. It's like, man, I've been sending you properties for 2.5 years. What are you looking at Zillow for? What are you looking at the other big guys for? So RealScout's definitely helped with engagement that way too.
Yeah, I'm definitely a culprit of that. I have this fear that I'm missing out on something because the agent I'm working with uses a traditional IDX that is hours behind. And I'll look on Redfin is where I primarily look, and then I look at theirs and they're missing a lot of properties. So I'm one of those people that still goes to those other platforms.
Well, I think one of the interesting tells is when I have a conversation with a real estate agent, they'll talk a big game about how great their IDX website is, and then I ask them what they use for home search, and they oftentimes have the Redfin app on their phone. So if you're not using your own search tech, I mean, what does that say about what you're giving to your clients?
Yeah.
And to that point, on the flip side, since we really dove headfirst into RealScout, I mean, I actually now have replaced the MLS app as an agent on my phone with the agent RealScout app because it's just as fast, easier to navigate, and that's how I get my information for the most part. I'm in the field too, so great job there.
Yeah, plus it integrates to Follow Boss, which we'll get into later in the call. But Andrew, I'm curious if we can switch gears and see a screen share and look at a demo of the software. And we've done some talking. I'm sure people now want to see what it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go into some of the nuts and bolts of RealScout, but I'm going to save some of the specifics for Chase so that he can talk about the integration with Follow Up Boss. But just to illustrate what we're looking at here, you have traffic, which is represented by these cars. Some of them are new leads and traffic that you buy or that you drive to your website. Many of them are sphere of influence, repeat business, referrals, and all of those cars are going into what we call a portal-powered engagement loop. And that's just a fancy way of saying the portals like Zillow and Redfin are doing a better job in captivating and engaging your clients than you are. And that's problematic. If you look at the road on the right here, this is where your IDX and your MLS come into play, but that's a bit of a lonely road for the reasons we described earlier. So if you implement RealScout and you get it going with the Follow Up Boss integration, you can create your own team-powered engagement loop or agent-powered engagement loop, and this is the desired outcome. So earlier we talked about how when I was selling real estate, my clients were going to the national portals to answer their questions about real estate. And the way we think about your database, your CRM, is you have buyers and you have sellers. But for the vast majority of people in your database, they're somewhere in between buying and selling, selling and buying. And of course, those buyers will eventually become sellers and the sellers will become buyers. And so if you can feed your whole database, your whole Follow Up Boss account into RealScout, we will nurture them in a way that complements Follow Up Boss, right? Follow Up Boss may send drip emails of one kind or another, but RealScout is going to send relevant and timely listing information, home value information to your database and keep them warm. I think that one of the interesting stats is that 90% of clients say they will use the same agent over and over again, but only 12% do. So you have past clients, they should be in RealScout. You have new leads, they should be in RealScout. We are working with the largest teams within Follow Up Boss, whether that's Kenny Trong, a Fast Agent, or Gary Ashton. And those folks are literally having thousands or tens of thousands of their database nurtured by RealScout. And the reason why RealScout has become so popular, well, we'll get into some of the reasons in just a minute, but just as evidence that RealScout has become popular or has won all these awards, RealScout recently participated in the Realogy Anywhere Innovation Summit. 300 companies or so applied, and RealScout walked away with the grand prize. Risk Media put out an article, the top resources for agents nationally. DocuSign, Tom Ferry, these are all entities that were on that list. RealScout was the first on that list. And speaking of Tom Ferry, if you listen to his podcast or his interviews with RealScout, you'll hear that he says that RealScout is for people who are not only paying attention to the now of real estate, but where it's going. So you asked for a bit of an overview. Let's get into the product. When you have people in your database who are active buyers, today you may put them on an IDX drip, which is going to have all types of results, and oftentimes it's going to be lackluster results, or you can put them into an MLS alert. And when you do that, you're going to find your clients are sending you Zillow links. So with RealScout, we have 100% of the fields from the MLS. So there's very little learning curve here. It's really fast and easy to get people set up for a listing alert. And what Chase will show you later is that you can actually automate the listing alert creation with Follow Up Boss. But the reason why consumers love these alerts is that they are written using natural language. And this is something that we built out years ago. Conversational emails is now in vogue, and you've seen it in the news with ChatGPT, et cetera. RealScout's been doing this for years, and these emails, because they sound like they were written by you, the agent, they get significantly higher click-through rate than the industry average. So we're seeing 16 times the click-through rate when compared to the industry average for real estate emails. And these emails are branded for you or your team or your brokerage. And then for sellers who are in your database, maybe these are homeowners, they're not active sellers yet. When they want to know what their home is worth, where are they going today? Well, they're going to Zillow, they're going to Redfin, and that can change. RealScout has introduced something called a home value alert. And a home value alert is going to showcase what Zillow thinks your home is worth, what another data provider, Atom Data, which powers LendingTree and other consumer websites, what they think your home is worth. And the reason why we showcase 2 valuation estimates as opposed to 1 is because there are products out there that just have 1 value estimate, and that is a conversation ender. This is a conversation starter, right? Because a consumer is going to look at this and they're going to say, wait a second, Zillow thinks my home is worth $850. This other data provider says it's worth $920. That's a little confusing to me. I want to reach out to my agent to make sense of the market and the neighborhood conditions. And so these emails get outstanding click-through rate and conversion. And this is going to help incubate listing leads in your network, in your database.
Hey, can I jump in there for one quick second, Andrew? Mm-hmm. One thing too that is so powerful here is there are home value alerts galore, but when you tie yourself to one number, and I love that the Atom logo is there too, so it's a third-party provider and the consumer can see that. But when you tie yourself as an agent to a specific number, like Andrew said, you're done. Whether or not it's accurate, it doesn't matter. The consumer is going to think that you said X price, and there's no way around it. So being that there's 2 values here, plus a third option to create your own, make it a range too, that does spark conversation, and that's evidenced by the number of requests we get which we'll talk about later. But it's a crucial piece there.
Yeah, and a common question we get is, hey, this agent-powered estimate at the top of the screen, where is that coming from? When you set this up, if you don't put a number there, it'll just be blank, and the consumer will have a call to action to for you to fill in that number, essentially give your professional opinion of that home's value, and it will not update automatically, and that's intentional because 3 months out, 6 months out, if there's a consumer that wants to know what you think their home is worth today, not 6 months ago, but today, they will request an update, and that's just another touch point that indicates that your client is raising their hand and ready to make a selling decision. So we covered the home value alerts that you see on the screen here. We covered the natural language listing alerts. There's a few other ways to nurture and captivate consumers on RealScout. One that's become kind of a sleeper success for RealScout is the market activity alerts, and that will show heat maps of buyer demand data in the neighborhood. So there's a lot we probably won't have time to cover today, but the key features here are ways to nurture and keep warm your database so that you can surface transaction-ready clients. And so that's the high level on RealScout, and then I'll pass it back to you, Elena, and maybe we can get Chase in the mix here to talk about the integration.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Andrew. Chase, before we dive into how you're using RealScout, I'm curious. I know you like to tinker with a lot of technology and you like to find the best, but also at the same time, change is really hard. You invest a lot of time and money into various tools. You invest a lot of time into your website, your IDX, and now all of a sudden you're looking and you see RealScout saying you're doing IDX wrong, and you might be skeptical. And so what ultimately made you decide, okay, I'm going to try RealScout for my business?
So yeah, we've been using RealScout on and off for 7.5 years. The full disclosure is, back in about 2019, we hopped into the Follow Up Boss community and ecosystem, and RealScout was not a partner at the time. Cut this out if you don't want this part. But we weren't able to use RealScout in the way we wanted to at the time, so we actually went a different route. Spent about 3 years there, and always knew RealScout was the best solution that was out there, but it didn't fit for what we were doing. Fast forward to now, about 9, 10, 12 months ago now, I kind of set out, like Elena said, to retinker and rebuild my entire tech solution, and knew that at the time then, the RealScout was an integration partner with Follow Boss, and that kind of was the impetus to start this redesign of my own business. And I mean, since then, it's been a complete non-negotiable aspect of it. And now with the further and further integration features that the RealScout's releasing, it's just gotten better and better since we dove, again, head first back in about November last year. But again, it had been the best forever. It took a while for me to kind of come back and see the light on that.
Yeah, I'm curious, when you say it's gotten better and better, can you expand a little bit more on how RealScout has helped your business?
Yeah, I mean, when we switched our whole database of probably 7,000 contacts from A back to RealScout, I mean, we noticed the engagement just skyrocketed right away. I mean, we had leads, and I should say, contacts or people that we had, quote unquote, being nurtured by another provider that never looked at a property, never asked about a property, never reached out. It was just radio silence. We've got one very specific client that we've actually been, nurturing very aggressively since. I mean, as soon as we came into RealScout, again, November, she was the first one. I kid you not, it was like 3 days after she got the first RealScout email. It was like instant strong request. And we've been, talking with her for quite a while, but now we've written probably 4 offers in the last couple of weeks specifically. And it's all because of that surfaced her in the first place. The second part of that's on the buy side. The second part is the home value alerts. And I always joke about this because, again, we use another provider, very large, I'm not going to mention. But a lot of folks use it. It's a good tool, but the engagement was lacking. We had about 1,000 leads, 1,000 homeowners receiving this alert once a month for 2.5 years. And we had 9 CMA requests in 2.5 years. Hands-on, hand raisers, right? And RealScout launched a beta for their home value alert, and I joke with Andrew about it all the time. It's like, great, another one. We've got 10 different versions of the same product. Wonderful. However, I gave it a shot. I brought everybody over, and I'm not kidding when I tell you we had 17 CMA requests in 6 weeks that led to 2 sit-down listing presentations, one of which we're still nurturing for later in this year. So, and I think what's so clever about that, the home value specifically, and I'll show you guys the demo later, we can walk through it, but how clean and how direct the messaging is. And it's not cumbersome. It's not data overload. It's not too much info. It's just what they want to see. And to Andrew's point earlier with the Zillow estimate there, I mean, they're going to go get that elsewhere. So might as well keep them in your own ecosystem. And then below that, they're going to be comparables that are there too. So I think it's just a way of how the data is presented that make it much, much more engaging.
Yeah, and to reiterate what you said, in case anyone missed it, with the other platform you're using, you had 9 requests over the course of 2.5 years. And when you launched this platform with RealScout, their home valuation tool, you got, how many was it? 17, 19?
It was 17 in 6 weeks with 2 presentations.
Yeah, that's
and that holds true, by the way. I had another agent friend of mine who recently, signed up for RealScout, and he messaged me and he said, "Hey man, just wanted to say thanks. I'm not even fully onboarded yet. I've not gotten everything set up just yet, but he already had 2 CMA requests in like 3 days. So it works across the board. I mean, we're averaging about a 50% click-through rate on those home value alerts, and now we're 6 months into it. So the newness has worn off, but we're still getting that engagement over and over and over.
Yeah, and that includes people that you set up 6 months ago and have been on it for 6 months, and they're still opening it and looking at that update.
Yep.
So a lot of people may be a little bit hesitant to make the switch. They've been used to using their IDX. They're afraid of how much time is going to take them to switch over. Maybe something will break. So can you share a little bit of insight of how the transition was of integrating RealScout into your system, as well as using Follow Boss alongside that?
Yeah. So, I mean, with respect to syncing Follow Boss, I mean, it's literally 2 clicks. You just set the back end, hook up the API, which is a copy and paste, and that's done. Everything is pushed into Follow Up Boss, activity, property views. If they like or heart a house, it shows up in Follow Up Boss. Now they're pushing notes if they look at the same house several times. If they look at their home valuation estimate, they're going to tag them so you can build smart lists around it. But the setup, to your point, is very, very simple. Now I'll let Andrew talk about the onboarding, perhaps if you're migrating from a large list of previous searches. I might let Andrew touch on that.
Yeah, so we do offer migration services. There are some caveats there, so reach out to our support team for the details and the guardrails around that. But we have some agents who have huge databases with a lot of saved searches and property alerts. Sometimes we can programmatically import those over to RealScout and get them up and going. Some cases, some of those folks may require a more manual migration, and we'll still do that for your most active clients, but there are some limits. And again, reach out to our customer service team for more information there. But we've even had our team manually recreate the shapes that are on the map, like the custom polygons in the search. We want to remove barriers for people getting started with RealScout. We want to make sure people can get success very quickly. We also know that agents aren't going to spend their weekends doing that. So we try to make it really easy for them. And we have a really great member success team.
Well, thanks for sharing.
I mean, we personally speaking, we just hired a VA to do it, and she migrated over 5,000 alerts. Took her a couple of weeks and a couple $100, and that was it for us. But the migration thing is pretty cool too.
Yeah, absolutely. So another potential concern people may have with any technology, not just RealScout, is the support available. A lot of companies are lacking on that front, where you've got great tech tools available, but when you come across an obstacle or you have a question, the support is lacking. So Chase, can you share experience with the customer support team at RealScout and how available they were to you and are to you?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is you don't really have to reach out to them for much because the software is so bulletproof and easy to use too. But whenever, I mean, even prior to my relationship with RealScout, I mean, I never had an issue getting a response. There's a chat box or a contact box on the bottom right of your screen, like most softwares these days, but thorough answers, friendly answers. And I mean, now when I'm talking with them directly, if there's a bug or a feature that I have wanted to see, it's not uncommon that I see it launched and live in a couple weeks. So they've done a great job at really listening. And like, but again, before that, building a product that doesn't need a lot of support because of how streamlined and easy it is to use, which is, I think, a pretty big testament to the software.
Yeah, that's very much unheard of in technology, where it's has 99% of what you need, and for those 1% times where you do need to reach out to support, but otherwise you've got everything you need right there.
Yeah.
Cool. So do you mind sharing your, oh, sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to say, I was looking through our support metrics here, and we typically get back to people within business hours, within a few hours, 3 to 5 hours on average. So we have a pretty responsive team, and we have a lot of practice doing this. I think that sometimes you look at a company that has only been around for a few months or a few years, and sometimes they're weighted down by their growth. RealScout's been around for 11 years, so this isn't our first rodeo, right? We're battle tested, and we have 100,000 plus customers using the product. So our systems are pretty solid at this point.
That's great to hear. Thanks for sharing those insights. So Chase, if you're okay with it, I'd like for you to share your screen and show people what RealScout is for you, how it works with Follow Up Boss, and kind of walking through that integration.
Sure. Let's go ahead and jump in. If there's something specific you want to see, let me know, but let me get this thing out of the way. But like I said before earlier, on the integration, it's really just a matter of dropping in the Follow Boss API. What I did was I had a tag sync. So what happens is anytime I tag a lead or a contact in Follow Up Boss, either automated through a lead flow, which Elena can help you with, of course, or if you just manually see someone that's missing it, you tag them with RealScout, and usually within 5 to 30 seconds, they're pushed into RealScout directly. The nice thing too is that they drop some context into the custom fields. So you'll actually have a RealScout link that takes you, the agent, directly to their search page, so you can quickly update or see what you have currently live. You have your listing alerts here, which is again your typical active, pending, closed. You have coming soon in certain markets as well. But like Andrew said earlier, full MLS fields. If there's not a field that you want on the default settings, you can add them. So you can literally get any field you want. Market activity alerts, that's the sleeper. This we use for what we call real-time buyer demand. And that actually aggregates data across the entire RealScout platform to give. What I usually tell sellers is, hey, this is everything to know about your property minus the price. So what homes are getting viewed the most, how many buyers are looking through the RealScout network, which depending on your MLS is tens of thousands of buyers. So I can quickly share with a client, hey, in this zip code of Anaheim, under $1 million in the last 3 months, there have been 1,300 buyers that have looked at 7,700 houses, or total views. Here's the heat map of where the popularity of those listings are, and then how the buyers have behaved over time. I mean, no other system has anything like this, and this is a wonderful way for sellers and also buyers too, as they're buyers you have that want to write low offers or are hesitant. Hey, give them this to show them the competition. I think it's a great way to get them off the fence. And then back here again. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I heard Andrew mention this a little bit earlier, and then I just heard you mention it. I'm sorry if maybe everyone else knows the answer to this, but I don't. But what is Sleeper?
Sleeper, just an underutilized or under promoted, perhaps, Andrew, tool.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't get a lot of airtime at RealScout, so it's kind of one of these hidden features, or these like Easter eggs, if you will, where when people get in here, they're setting up. I mean, we're setting up tons and tons of these alerts. So we typically talk about the home value alerts and the listing alerts, but these market activity alerts are this like what's called like a sleeper success, right? Where it's like unexpectedly out of the blue, you find out that this is something that's driving a ton of value.
Oh yeah, okay. I mean, and that you can call that a nosy neighbor report. That's a kind of a buzzword I've seen around too, but that's that sort of a valuable tool. Sorry, Elena.
No, yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna say, continue on. We want to keep seeing more of the platform, and then would love for you to switch gears and show what all you can do in Follow Up Boss without even having to go to this page.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the nice thing with the listing alerts, to an extent, and then the home value alerts, is if you want you can basically automate most of the process. 100% of it on the home value alert side. So what happens is, if I know it's blurred out here, but if they're in RealScout and there is an address that is in their follow-up boss address field, the home value alert is created automatically. If you turn this on, which I have mine here, it will turn on. It'll update the automation for the home value alert within a minute, and it's totally hands off. It goes out the same day or the next business day, depending on what time that address gets populated in there. Completely automated for you. You don't have to touch anything. The listing alert side, I know they're releasing some new features soon. As of right now, if there's a property inquiry and follow-up boss from a certain lead flow or an open house tool that you're using, RealScout will create a listing alert for the basic criteria around that property inquiry. So you can automate quite a bit of this. But the nice thing is, I mean, I don't often have to come in here and tinker too much. That's a buzzword for today, tinkering again. But you know, this is done. I mean, you can come in here, like Andrew said earlier, you can add your own valuations, add your own range. I can show you what that looks like. Actually, might be helpful. Move my face out of the way. No, there we go. So you can come in here, change the schedule here. You can add your own valuation. So right now, like Andrew's earlier on the slides, had a valuation that the agent had put in. This one just is blank because I didn't put anything. But it's just a huge, big, bold call to action, which is great. If you want to get granular, you can turn on or off Zillow. You can have it just show the range of this estimate versus the entire, versus just the specific number. How far out do you want the comps to show? And then this is pretty cool because I know on the slide, there was a different call to action here, but this is one of the powerful things I think that they've done is the calls to action on this are so the same across the board, and they're very strategically placed. The one down here, if you remember from 5 minutes ago, if you want to rewind it, this was yellow. So what'll happen is if the Adam number and the Zestimate number, it might be 10%. I'm not sure what the exact metric is there, but this one, since they're so close, it says, you know, automated evaluations are still less than precise. Consult your agent for a complimentary evaluation. If they're far enough away, that whole box turns yellow, which is obviously more eye-popping, and it says, hey, there's a large discrepancy in these values. Consult your agent by clicking here. I think it's so smart how they did that because that truly just catapults the engagement and catapults the scenario requests because it's living and breathing based on the data itself. So, but again, I'm not in here too much because I don't need to be, which is nice because we're not, you know, I don't want to just sit here behind the screen, you know, being the Wizard of Oz. So that's how simple that is. And then on the listing alert side, to give you a quick behind the scenes, it's going to feel very similar. You've got boundary maps you can use, which is the same thing on most tools. I mentioned earlier, coming soon is available in our MLS. I'm not sure how widespread that is, Andrew, but you can get pendings and solds, historical data, which is great too. But creating these searches is going to be very much like anything else. One of the great things, though, that no other tools have I've ever seen, in our market, we've got a lot of very funky school boundaries, and this is another sleeper product, if you will. A lot of funky school boundaries. I mean, the city that I'm in, you can go to 5 different high schools living in the one city, which is pretty confusing. And if they need to be in a certain district, relying on the agent's input in the MLS for the correct school can be less than satisfying. So what RealScout's done is brought in, again, in certain markets, I understand, third-party data here. So I can actually come in here and type in the high school that I want the boundaries to be. And this is an almost to the inch map of that high school district. So without relying on drawing a map myself or using the MLS field, I'm sorry, it's over here. I can get almost to the inch boundaries for certain schools, which are very important for obviously families that are moving too. But and like I mentioned too, if any of these features that you want are not showing up here, you can hop down here and then grab literally any MLS field that you could possibly want to further hone down their search. So very easy. And then of course you have your different scheduling, daily, weekly. You can do concierge mode in the MLS, which many IDXs don't have that at all. So if you want to have that precursory glance into the properties before they get sent, you can do that as well. It can change the time of day that these get sent out, but very simple, very easy, and all of it gets pushed in a follow box, which is the best part. So you're not usually in here too much, to be honest.
Yeah, and so let's pretend you have a lead or a client in Follow Up Boss, but they're not in RealScout. What's the easiest way for you to add someone to RealScout?
Yeah, literally come in here. The tag's already there, but you would just add the tag for, in my case, add the RealScout tag, and you're done. And it usually takes 5 to 10 seconds, and they show up right here. If you noticed, this is a count. How many listing alerts do we have active? How many market activity alerts are active? And how many home value alerts are active? 2 minutes ago, this said 4 when we started this demo. Since I just saved this one, it updated to 5. So you can see how fast that is syncing back and forth. And then everything that they look at with respect to properties is showing up. That's all. There we go. RealScout data, RealScout. Everything is pushing over here. Here we go. And then as an agent inside of Follow Boss, if I come in here to look at their activity and I want to see the property, just click on it. Pulls right up. And the nice thing too is, as an agent, I have, and again, this, Andrew, you might want to jump in here. Is this across the whole platform, or is it market specific to have agent information, showing remarks, private remarks, all that stuff?
It's in virtually every market, but we work in hundreds of MLSs, so we always have to be careful to add a little disclaimer saying that every MLS is different, and you should verify with our team if something MLS specific is important to you.
Yeah. One of the other sleeper ones I like to always bring up that is, again, very underutilized is this agent notes field, which is right here. This is a publicly viewed field that adds context to your buyer's searches. So if they're logged in under your RealScout account specifically, if I put any notes in here, and what I've been using these for preview remarks, whether in person or online, if I know, hey, Citron's a new development, it's on the corner of Moody and Orange, right? I can add some context that just says, hey, great location. This used to be the school district. It got changed to housing now. It's right across the street from the most expensive neighborhood in Cyprus. It's going to feed to X, Y, and Z school. The nice thing about that is that becomes a big yellow box that says notes from your agent, and it's literally right under all of this data. So it's the first thing they're going to see after looking at the pictures. And that just positions the agent as the expert versus just in a typical, MLS or IDX view. So love that one too.
A question for you, Chase. I'm sure because you got all this engagement, you're getting a lot of alerts that people are looking at a lot of things. So how do you manage to organize all of those alerts and prioritize different people, not only property inquiries and looking at listings for sale, but also your sellers who are looking at that report?
That's all showing up in our IDX smart list that I think you built for us, actually. So again, the nice thing is I don't have to go chasing the data. Now I can come into RealScout again and I can see everything, and there's a little more data if I want to. I can come here and filter by, hey, just give me, people that have looked at a listing or any of the alerts, right? I can do that in here, but I don't usually need to, because if you have Elena's build out or anything similar, if I come right in here, I have literally all of their searching alert activity. I have a smart list as well built out for their home value, so I can separate the buyers and sellers if I need to showcase, the people raising their hands. But very, very simple, and that's the nice thing, is it's very simple. And on the app on my phone, of course, I can't share that, but any direct messages, showing requests as well are going to ping me directly there too. So it's pretty difficult to miss a hot opportunity.
That's cool. Thank you for sharing. And thanks for taking the time to do this demo. I know a lot of people will find this helpful they want to see the nitty gritty. And so I personally would love that as an agent. So thanks for going into that nitty gritty. A question for you, Andrew. You had mentioned that you're always making innovations and updates to the platform. Can you share what your current future plans are and updates for RealScout?
Yeah, absolutely. So our best ideas are not our own. They come from people like Chase and people in the Follow Up Boss community. So we do read every comment, every inbound email, etc. So please keep the feedback coming. But it's also why we partner with people like Chase, because we have some really brilliant engineers on our team, but they're not in the field, sitting open houses, driving around buyers, at listing appointments. And so You know, we have some cool things that are up our sleeve. I can't share too many of them today, but one of them that we will be announcing in the coming weeks is the ability to automatically nurture folks in your database, even if they don't have a property address or a property inquiry address. So just to be very clear, with the way it works today with Follow Up Boss is if you have a lead that came in from Zillow, let's say, and we know that they inquired on 123 Main Street, we can create a listing alert automatically that mirrors that inquiry. That's something that already exists today. People are using it with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of their clients on RealScout. If we know that somebody owns a home and in Follow Up Boss it has the homeowner address, we can automatically create those home value alerts. But what I'm talking about, which is coming in the coming weeks, is what happens if you have a contact that actually only has an email address and has no address. Well, in that case, we will set them down a path of what we call auto nurture. And auto nurture is going to enable them to automatically engage themselves. In other words, it may ask them, do you want to track your home's value? And then they click on that and they can create their own home value alert. Or they can start looking at properties and we will pick up on clues and what they're searching for and then create a listing alert. So, you know, talk about the ultimate set it and forget it strategy here. I mean, there are folks in the Follow Up Boss community who have tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of leads. They don't remember exactly where each lead came from or how serious they are. But if you can allow that consumer to be wed to your search experience and your home value alert experience, as opposed to the national portals, naturally you're going to be unlocking more transactions. And I think that especially in a low inventory market like we find ourselves in today, you have to make a decision as a business owner. Are you going to go and buy more leads? And I think people are kind of fatigued on that right now because the quality of leads has dropped and the seriousness of those leads has also plummeted. Or are you going to take your database and extract more ROI from it? And so a lot of the features that we're developing are to help people like Follow Up Boss, you know, power users take their database and get a lot of ROI from it. Because in that case, you're not spending thousands and thousands of dollars on new leads. Instead, you're just paying a software fee to nurture the folks that you already have in your sphere of influence.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. You know, a coach I was just talking to the other day said he wants to chase activity. He doesn't just want to chase leads. And so that is a huge game changer. You're already tracking activity of RealScout, but if you can allow your stale database that you paid for already years ago, you don't know who they are, instead of cold calling all of them, thousands of them, and wasting time, you can allow them to raise their hands to you.
Exactly.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, like you just mentioned, I mean, the nice thing now is, I mean, when I got in the business, you know, you're trained on, hey, you know, ABCD, hot, warm, cool, cold, call them every 2 weeks, call them every 6 days, call them every month, etc. And that still rings true. And that's still an important metric to go by. But if you can also marry in activity. So now it says, hey, well, this person told me 6 months ago that, hey, they're ready. They're going to be ready in 9 months from now. And then halfway into that time period, you start seeing they're looking at RealScout listings over and over and over. Well, that's a pretty good indicator that they might be ready a little bit sooner. So when you have that kind of data built into your database and your CRM specifically, that again uncovers some pretty rare opportunities.
Yeah, in this day and age of lead generation, like Andrew says, some people have hundreds of thousands of people. So you may have had a conversation with 1,000 people, you stage them as warm, 1,000 people stage them as hot, but you have very limited time dedicated toward calling. So you can prioritize, okay, you know, I've got these 100 people that are hot, but 2 of them have actually been doing something on my website, though, so they have a much higher likelihood of having motivation. And so that's where a tool like RealScout is very helpful. So last question for you, Andrew, before we wrap this up, is if someone wants to learn more about RealScout, where can they go?
I think the easiest place for people to find information about RealScout, specifically in relation to Follow Up Boss, is fubscout.com. That's FUB scout.com. And a lot of people in the community are referring to themselves as Fub Scouts. It's just people who are enthusiastic about best-in-class strategy with Follow Up Boss CRM and RealScout for everything client nurture and engagement. So that's the best way to get information about the integration or to request a demo. And then I'm sure that anywhere that you find this video, there will be some kind of call to action or an explanation of how to get introduced to our team, because Elena has been really great about that, making sure that her clients are taken care of and get a a nice handoff to somebody on our team.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you both being on this call and taking the time to share RealScout. And I know a lot of people will find a lot of value out of this.
Great. Thanks so much, Elena. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.